When Scottie Scheffler walked into that downtown courthouse, most people thought they were watching a fallen athlete grasp at dignity. That's when a powerful judge made the biggest mistake of his career, mocking, baiting, and trying to break a man he thought was just another disgraced celebrity. What he didn't know was that Scottie wasn't alone, and he wasn't backing down. Because what started as a routine hearing over missing charity funds turned into something much bigger. A legal firestorm, a corrupt system exposed, and a quiet man showing the world what real strength looks like when the cameras are still rolling. The double doors creaked open and all eyes turned as Scottie Scheffler stepped into the courtroom. Once the golden boy of golf, major winner, fan favorite, a symbol of clean sportsmanship, he now stood accused, not of cheating on the green, but something far more unsettling. Cameras clicked like gunfire. Flashes painted his face in white bursts. Reporters whispered with hushed urgency, sensing a bigger story than the docket suggested. Scottie wore a dark suit, no tie, his expression calm but unreadable. His attorney, Marla Higgins, whispered something under her breath as they approached the defendant's table. Across the room, Judge Harold Munsey shuffled his papers. In his late 60s, his black robe hung off narrow shoulders like armor. He'd presided over dozens of high-profile cases, always with an iron hand and often a sharp tongue. Rumors of bias, power trips, even backdoor dealings had followed him for years. None stuck. He liked it that way. As the bailiff called the room to order, Judge Munsey lifted his eyes slowly toward Scottie. "Well," he said, his voice smooth and cold, "I see the celebrity showed up." A nervous chuckle from the gallery. Scottie said nothing. Outside, protesters clashed with paparazzi. Inside, the walls felt tighter with each passing second. What was supposed to be a simple hearing over a clerical mistake was already starting to feel personal. And as Judge Munsey leaned forward, lips curling into a faint smirk, Scottie realized something. This wasn't just about law. This was about ego. And it was about to get ugly. 6 months earlier, Scottie Scheffler had been on top of the world. Fresh off another tournament win, he'd returned home to Texas to host an annual charity event, his way of giving back. A weekend of golf, donations, and good press. Everything was perfect, until it wasn't. 2 weeks later, Scottie received a formal notice. He was under investigation. The accusation? Misuse of funds from the charity's silent auction. A $75,000 discrepancy in the records. Money that, according to new documents, never made it to the intended hospitals. Scottie was stunned. He didn't handle the accounting. He trusted his team. Every transaction had been triple-checked, he was sure of it. But when he called his finance manager, the number was disconnected. Emails bounced, and the donation software account wiped. What began as confusion turned quickly into suspicion. Local papers picked up the story, then national outlets. "Golden Boy Gone Greedy?" one headline read. His sponsors stayed silent. His publicist quit. Scottie did what he'd always done, kept his head down and let his performance speak for him. But this wasn't a golf course. And the rules were different here. By the time he was summoned to court, the whispers had become noise. And somewhere along the way, Judge Harold Munsey was assigned to his case. Coincidence? Maybe. But as Scottie stood in that courtroom, facing a man known more for theatrics than justice, one thing became clear. Someone wanted this to be more than just a financial hearing. They wanted a spectacle. And they were about to get one. Judge Harold Munsey adjusted his glasses, leaned back in his chair, and let out a theatrical sigh. "Well, Mr. Scheffler," he began, voice dripping with disdain, "I suppose swinging a stick at a ball qualifies you to handle six-figure finances now." The gallery tittered with restrained laughter. A few gasps. Even the stenographer paused her fingers for half a beat. Scottie didn't move. His jaw tightened, but his gaze stayed fixed forward. Munsey wasn't done. "I've seen reality stars with better fiscal awareness," the judge continued. "But maybe that's what you're going for? A fall from grace makes for good ratings." A cameraman in the back zoomed in on Scottie's face. He gave them nothing. "You athletes think you're untouchable," Munsey added, flipping through a folder he hadn't opened until now. "A few trophies, some endorsement deals, and suddenly you believe you're above scrutiny." Marla Higgins, Scottie's attorney, stood. "Your Honor, if we could keep this focused on the matter at hand—" "Sit down, counselor," Munsey snapped. "You'll speak when I allow it." The room went dead silent. Munsey slammed the folder shut. "This court isn't a country club, Mr. Scheffler. If you're expecting a friendly round of golf, you're in the wrong place." Scottie blinked. Just once. Marla leaned in, whispered under her breath. But the damage was done. The headlines had already written themselves. And as the judge grinned ever so slightly at the cameras, it was clear this wasn't justice. It was theater. Marla Higgins had been in hundreds of courtrooms, but something about this one made her stomach knot. She leaned closer to Scottie, her voice low. "This isn't a normal hearing." Scottie looked at her, confused. "Protocol's off," she said quickly. "Documents are missing from the court file. The discovery we submitted last week, it's not in the judge's binder." Scottie opened his mouth to respond, but Marla cut him off with a glance. "Don't speak unless I say so. He's baiting you." Up at the bench, Muncy pretended to review paperwork, but his eyes kept flicking up, watching them. Almost like he wanted them to notice. Marla scanned the room. The crowd was packed with press, staffers, a few familiar legal faces, but then someone caught her eye. Back row, near the exit. A man in a dark suit, hands folded, no phone, no notepad. He wasn't watching the proceedings. He was watching them. Before she could nudge Scottie, the man stood and quietly slipped out the side door. "Who was that?" Marla whispered, half to herself. She reached for her case files. Several pages had been rearranged. 2 exhibits were missing. Photocopies, replaced with blanks. Her pulse quickened. "Muncy's playing dirty," she said, voice tight. "Or someone is. Either way, we're walking into a setup." Scottie leaned back, absorbing the weight of her words. This wasn't just a legal tangle anymore. It was a game. And someone had already decided who the loser would be. Scottie adjusted the cuff of his suit, more out of habit than need. The courtroom buzz had dulled to a low hum, but his mind was racing. Marla was right. This wasn't a hearing. It was a performance, and he was the unwilling star. Judge Muncy leaned over to whisper something to the court clerk. No mic, no notes. Just a few seconds of hushed dialogue followed by a nod. Something passed between them. Not just words, understanding, familiarity. Scottie caught it. So did Marla. She slid a yellow legal pad across the table. Just 4 words, written in clean block letters. "They know each other." Scottie blinked. Once. Then nodded. Muncy cleared his throat. "We'll break for 20 minutes. I trust the defendant won't flee to a sand trap." Smirks from the gallery. The gavel echoed. As people stood, stretched, whispered, and filed out, Marla stayed still. Eyes on the clerk. The same man who had logged their discovery documents last week. The same man who now seemed just a little too casual for someone under Muncy's command. "I want a full digital trail," she muttered, mostly to herself. "Filing times, IP logs, everything." Scottie rose beside her. "You think he's deleting things?" "I think someone's trying to erase you," she said, grabbing her tablet. Quietly, efficiently. As they stepped out into the hall, the air shifted. Less heat, more chill, like the calm before a storm. Across the corridor, the same man in the dark suit from earlier leaned against the wall. No name tag, no phone, no reason to be there. He nodded once. Not at Marla, at Scottie. Then turned and disappeared again. The courthouse cafe was nearly empty. A few staffers sipped burnt coffee, flipping through papers. A security guard scrolled through his phone. Nothing felt normal. Marla slid into a booth across from Scottie. She kept her voice low. "There's a network. Whispered rumors. Quiet favors. A pattern I've only seen in one other case." Scottie leaned forward. "Whose?" "Senator Franklin," she said. 4 years ago. Case buried so deep it never even made trial. Witnesses backed out. Evidence vanished. Judge? Muncy. Scottie exhaled slowly. Marla opened her laptop. "Look at this." She turned the screen. Court docket entries. Altered timestamps. An entire hearing that never happened, now marked as resolved. Same clerk, same judge. "Why me?" Scottie asked. "What do they want?" Marla hesitated. "I think you're a symbol. Clean record. Public favorite. If they can break you, they can break anyone." Scottie stared out the window. "So I'm not the target. You're the message." Suddenly a figure appeared by their booth. A waitress. Late 20s. Nervous hands. She slid a coffee toward Marla, then paused. "I saw something," she whispered. "Day before your hearing. That man in the dark suit. He met with the judge. Late. After hours. I cleaned the chambers." Marla's eyes sharpened. "You're willing to testify?" The woman's hand trembled. "Not here. Not now. I'll leave a note. Locker 17 in the staff hallway. Check it in an hour. Then she turned and walked away. Fast. Scottie watched her go. This is bigger than charity fraud, isn't it? Marla closed the laptop, jaw set. This isn't about money, she said. It's about control. And someone's afraid of what happens when that control slips. Scottie's voice was quiet. Then let's make them afraid. The staff hallway was colder than the rest of the building. Less foot traffic, fewer eyes. Echoes bounced off the linoleum floors and concrete walls. Marla walked briskly, heels clicking like a metronome of urgency. Scottie followed, hands in his pockets, every muscle tight. Locker 17 was near the end. Plain, dented, padlocked, but the lock was hanging open. Marla paused, scanned the hallway, then slowly pulled the door open. Inside, a folded envelope. No name, no markings. Just one word scrawled across the front in pencil. Careful! She opened it. Inside were 3 printed photos. Blurry, low-res, surveillance footage, or maybe a still from a hidden camera. But the subjects were unmistakable. Judge Muncy, the court clerk, and the man in the dark suit. In a private room. Papers on the table. Money exchanging hands. Scottie leaned in, breath caught. Proof, he whispered. Not yet, Marla replied, but enough to cause panic. Behind them, a faint creak. They both turned. Nothing. But the door to the hallway was no longer fully closed. Marla tucked the envelope inside her briefcase. We don't know who's watching, or how many of them there are. Scottie nodded. So what's the play? We leak it, carefully. One outlet, one reporter we can trust. And if they shut it down? Marla gave him a look. One that didn't need words. Then we go louder. As they made their way back toward the courtroom, Scottie couldn't shake the feeling. This wasn't a scandal anymore. It was a war. And someone had just lit the fuse. Rain had started to fall by the time court resumed. A soft patter on the tall windows, barely audible beneath the murmur of voices returning to their seats. Scottie sat down beside Marla. He felt different now, less like a defendant, more like a soldier in a fight he hadn't asked for, but couldn't afford to lose. Judge Muncy re-entered, robes swaying, expression unreadable. We'll proceed with preliminary statements, he said, voice clipped. Unless there's an objection? Marla stood. Actually, Your Honor, we'd like a short recess before continuing. There's been a new development. Muncy's eyes narrowed. What kind of development? One that may change the direction of this case entirely. He hesitated. Just a beat. Just enough to show the mask slipping. No, he said. Denied. Marla didn't sit down. Then we request this be entered into the official record. She handed a sealed envelope to the clerk, not the same one from before. Muncy's face twitched, almost imperceptibly. What is this? He asked. Evidence, Marla replied, pertaining to potential misconduct related to this court. The gallery buzzed like a kicked hornet's nest. Cameras whirred to life. Muncy's gavel slammed down. Silence! But it was too late. Eyes were on him now, not just courtroom eyes, but media eyes, political eyes, dangerous eyes. Scottie watched as the judge's composure cracked. Just a flicker, but enough. And in that flicker, he saw something he hadn't expected. Fear. Not much. Not loud, but real. After all the jabs, the mockery, the games, something had finally pierced through the arrogance. As the bailiff called for order, Marla leaned toward Scottie. We just changed the game, she whispered. Scottie looked straight ahead. No, he said. We started it. By the time court adjourned for the day, the storm outside had turned vicious. Thunder rolled low and heavy, a perfect soundtrack for what was brewing inside. The courtroom emptied slowly. No one wanted to be the first to leave, not after what had just happened. Scottie and Marla moved quickly, straight to the underground parking garage. No press. No onlookers, just concrete, rainwater, and the hum of fluorescent lights. Scottie leaned against a pillar, his voice low. You think Muncy's going to retaliate? He already is, Marla said. The moment we submitted that envelope, we drew a line. She opened her phone. Messages were pouring in. Some from legal contacts. A few from reporters. One caught her eye. Blocked number. No text, just an image. It was a photo of her license plate, taken that day. From behind. Too close. She showed it to Scottie. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. They both understood what it meant. "You want out?" he asked. Marla shook her head. "I've never walked away from a fight, and I'm not starting with this one." Footsteps echoed down the ramp. Both of them froze. A man emerged from the shadows. Mid-40s, trench coat, hat pulled low. He stopped a few feet away, eyes barely visible under the brim. "You don't know who you're dealing with," he said calmly. Marla stepped forward. "Then tell us." He smirked. "You're not asking the right questions." Then he turned, disappeared behind a concrete column, and was gone. Scottie looked at Marla. "What are the right questions?" She stared at the empty ramp. "Not who," she said quietly. "Why?" Marla barely slept. She sat at her kitchen table, papers spread across every inch. Laptop open, coffee cold. She wasn't just building a defense anymore. She was building a map. Threads between judges, clerks, corporate donors, case history, campaign contributions, everything Judge Muncy had touched in the last 10 years. She found patterns, overlapping names, quiet settlements, and a private consultancy firm that kept showing up in sealed documents. Scottie called just after 6 a.m. "You awake?" "Barely," she replied. "I couldn't sleep." "Good, we're going to need you sharp." He was silent for a beat. "I found something." That got her attention. "Go on." Scottie hesitated. "It's about the charity fund. I dug up old board emails, stuff I was CC'd on but never opened. There's one from a guy named Bressler. He was handling back-end donations. He flagged something weird months before this blew up." Marla was already typing. "What did he say?" "That someone from outside was routing bids through dummy accounts. Same amounts, same timestamps, different IPs, then the trail went cold." Marla paused. Bressler's name was on one of the files she'd flagged from Muncy's last corporate case. "What happened to him?" Scottie's voice dropped. "He disappeared. Went to Costa Rica, never came back." Marla sat back in her chair, pulse quickening. "This wasn't about sloppy accounting," she whispered. "It was an operation. Controlled fraud. Designed to collapse." "And I was the fall guy," Scottie finished. They both sat in the silence that followed, thick, heavy. Then Marla spoke. "If we prove this..." Scottie nodded. "We don't just clear your name." Marla closed her laptop. "We burn the whole thing down." The courtroom was packed, not just with reporters and spectators, but with witnesses, names from Marla's files. A former donor, a whistleblower from the consultancy firm, even Bressler's brother, flown in overnight. Everyone who had once been silent now gathered like storm clouds. Scottie sat straighter than he had all trial. Calm, steady. This time, he wasn't just defending himself. He was exposing them. Judge Muncy entered, slower than usual. The air shifted. Even he could feel it, the tide pulling away from him. Marla stood. "Your Honor," she began, voice clear, "we respectfully submit a motion for dismissal based on the introduction of new evidence. Evidence that not only clears my client, but implicates individuals connected to your court in a coordinated financial scheme spanning multiple cases and jurisdictions." Muncy scoffed. "Baseless." Marla didn't flinch. "Then explain this." She turned to the screen behind her. A single image flickered on. Judge Muncy, the court clerk, the man in the dark suit, money in hand, gasps, phones raised, flashbulbs burst like fireworks. Muncy stood, face draining. "This is inadmissible," he barked. "Illegally obtained drugs." "Actually," Marla said smoothly, "the footage was submitted this morning by a witness under whistleblower protection, along with a signed affidavit, under oath." Silence. Then, movement. Two men in suits entered from the back, DOJ badges. Quiet, swift. They walked straight to the bench. "Judge Harold Muncy," one said, "you're under federal investigation. Please come with us." No outburst, no rage, just a man realizing the performance was over. As they led him away, Scottie looked at Marla. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. Justice wasn't loud. It was final. And today it belonged to him.